Hello fans and friends across the universe and welcome to my YouTube channel From Me to You. My name's Keir Smith, back today with another video with 10 questions for Beatles fans. And this video is inspired by a recent YouTube channel that I found called Everything Phil Collins, and the host there did a video where he asked, are you a Genesis fan? And then asked a series of questions about Genesis and Phil Collins. And so naturally after seeing that video I started putting together 10 questions for Beatles fans. So what I'd like to do here is ask you, the viewers, the 10 questions and get your minds ticking. And then I'll go through the 10 questions again at the end and give you my answers for what they're worth. And you can either agree or disagree. So with all that said, let's get to it. So question number one, what's the Beatles album that you listen to the most? We'll start with a relatively easy question because it doesn't necessarily have to be your favourite album, does it? Question number two, what's your favourite Beatles solo album and why? And just to be clear, you can include Wings, The Travelling Wilburys, basically anything post-Beatles by any of the four members. Question three, and this is a good one. Which song didn't appear on a Beatles album that you really feel should have? For example, after watching the recent Get Back documentary, you saw the band rehearsing loads of different songs that didn't make the Beatles' final album, Let It Be. Question four, this is quite simple. Remove one song from the Beatles' White Album, but it can't be Revolution 9. Question five, I'd like you to create your perfect Beatles single. Now, what I mean by that is you can mix and match any of the songs from any of the singles that the Beatles released, UK or US releases. So, for example, you could have Love Me Do backed with Don't Let Me Down. You could have Penny Lane backed with This Boy, for example. Question six. All of these four albums were released in 1973. Ringo put out his much loved Ringo album, George released Living in the Material World, John released Mind Games, and Paul McCartney and Wings released Red Rose Speedway. Put them in your order of preference. Question seven. Now you can only choose one of these three Beatles songs. Free as a Bird, Real Love, or Now and Then. Which one would you take with you? Question eight. What's your favourite Ringo sung Beatles song? Now, I think there was 11 that were officially released on singles, EPs and albums, but it might be that you prefer an outtake like If You've Got Trouble, which I think was on Anthology too. Anyway, you decide. Question 9. What's your favourite Beatles cover version? Now, there's some great songs to choose from the albums Please Please Me with the Beatles, Beatles for Sale. It may be that you choose something from the Beatles Live at the BBC, Volume 1 or Volume 2. And finally, for question 10, I thought I'd try and dig a little deeper here. And I'd like to ask, what do the Beatles mean to you? So there you go, 10 questions for Beatles fans. Now, hopefully you're all typing away furiously in the comment section below, and I welcome any answers to any of those questions. I don't expect you to answer all 10. If you want to, please do, that'd be great. But it'd be really interesting to hear from anyone who has any thoughts on any of these questions. Now, as I said at the start of the video, I'll go through the questions again now and give you my answers for what they're worth. Starting with question number 1. What is the Beatles album that you listen to the most? My answer for that is the White Album. It's not my favourite Beatles album. My favourite Beatles album is Abbey Road, but I always go back to the White Album. I think just because there's so much to choose from and I never get bored of it. Question 2 was, what's your favourite Beatles solo album and why? I'm going to go with Ram because it's so stylistically diverse. It's so intricate, detailed, colourful and super stylish. I love every song on the album, a masterpiece. Question 3 was, which song didn't appear on a Beatles album but you really feel should have? Now, me and my brother Liam had this conversation years ago, so I haven't actually thought about this answer for too long because I was remembering conversations that we had, and I'm going to go with Some Other Guy, which we really thought should have been on Please Please Me. Yeah, Some Other Guy is a great rock and roll track and would have fit perfectly anywhere on Please Please Me. Perhaps taking place of something like A Taste of Honey, maybe? Okay, question 4, I asked, remove one song from the Beatles' White Album, but it can't be Revolution 9, so I'd go with Piggies. It's not that I dislike the song when I listen to it, I enjoy it, but I love so much of the White Album, and this is just one that is one of my lesser favourites, let's say. For question 5, I asked you to create the perfect Beatles single, and now I've got to do it. I think it's difficult to improve on Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane, but I will go with Penny Lane as my A side and Rain as the B side. Penny Lane and Rain, musically, absolutely fascinate me. There's so much to like on both of those songs for entirely different reasons. They're both top 10 Beatles songs for me, and I love them dearly. For question 6, I asked you to put in order of preference these 4 albums that were released in 1973: Ringo's Ringo album, George's Living in the Material World, Paul and Wings with Red Rose Speedway, and John's Mind Games. So in order of preference, I'm going to go with number 1, Red Rose Speedway, 2, Mind Games, just ahead of George's Living in the Material World, and 4th, Ringo. Of that list, Red Rose Speedway would be the clear winner for me, but Living in the Material World by George and John's Mind Games is a really close call. Ringo's album's great, but I just prefer the others more so. For question 7, I asked you to choose one song from the following 3 Beatles songs: Free as a Bird, Real Love, and Now and Then. For years, my answer would have been Real Love, so I'm going to go with that. Amazing song, beautifully sung, and George's guitar playing is so good on that track. For question 8, I asked, what's your favourite Ringo sung Beatles song? My answer to that has always been Octopus's Garden. I absolutely adore that song. It's so vibrant and uplifting, and it puts a smile on my face. I love George's guitar playing again, the gargling under the water effects, brilliant. It's just so well done, perfectly executed, and an absolute joy. I adore it. Top 30 Beatles song? I'm not joking. For question 9, I asked, what's your favourite Beatles cover version? Now, I did a video on this ages ago, 2 or more years ago, and I chose my top 5 Beatles cover versions, and I chose Till There Was You as my number 1 in that video, and nothing's changed. It's absolutely gorgeous, really tender. Love Paul's vocal, love George's solo. It's so sweet, and yeah, perfection. And finally, for question 10, I dug deep and asked, what do the Beatles mean to you? And now I've got to answer that. So it means everything. It means so much. They're not just a band. It's more than a band. It's more than just the music. Aside from the great music, I love the story. There's so much detail and depth to it, and it's endlessly interesting. And of course, I consider myself a huge fan, a very knowledgeable fan, and I'm a huge collector too. I dread to think how much money I've spent on the Beatles and Beatles related things in my life, but it's money well spent, believe me. I love my collection. It's overflowing and it's getting out of hand, and my girlfriend gives me a bit of a hard time every now and then about it, but it ain't going to stop me. And when I listen to the Beatles or any of the solo albums, it's like having a warm, emotional blanket wrapped around me. I feel very comforted anytime I listen to anything by John, Paul, George, or Ringo. And it's my passion, it's my hobby, it's my reason for doing this channel in many ways. But to put it in simple terms, it's like a bottomless well of joy and wonder that I can revisit anytime I like. And that's something extremely special and dear to my heart. Truth be told, I'd be lost without it. I really would. There are other great bands. I love Pink Floyd, I love the Smiths, Nirvana, countless other bands, but there's nothing quite like the Beatles, as you well know. So that's it. 10 questions for Beatles fans. I've just given you my answers. I hope you enjoyed them and found them vaguely interesting. Now, over to you. Please leave any thoughts down in the comment section below. I'd be really interested to read what you come up with. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you for my next video sometime soon. Bye for now.